Bi-week Wednesday here. Pulse of the Pack is back here. I am Jacob Westendorf, your host, and joined by a special guest. We normally have two goofy-looking men, so we decided to finally add some grace to this show for once. I have Maggie Loney of CHTV. And Maggie, how are we doing tonight?
I'm good. We just wrapped up Pack a Day, so the longer I get to talk about the Packers normally is for the better. So
Yeah, no
happy to be here.
complaints. No complaints at all. So I have Maggie here for several reasons. First of all, she is a master of title puns. So for those of you that read That's What She Said, that comes out Tuesdays, Wednesdays. It kind of varies on the week, I believe. That's hilarious, first of all. And there's some pretty good sound bites or clips from that will come from the people we're here to talk about tonight, and that is the Packers running backs. And I found it kind of fitting because, Maggie, we were supposed to be at a autograph signing tonight. We're recording this on a Tuesday evening for Jamal Williams, Danny Vitale, and Aaron Jones. That got postponed because, surprise, surprise, players don't want a vacation in Green Bay, Wisconsin when there's snow on the ground and they have options to go wherever they want. So their agents forgot to say that. Nonetheless, it's going to be postponed, and at some point we will all be there to go through that again. But that's what we're going to talk about tonight is the running backs, because I think they've been a big story for this season. Let's start, Maggie, with Aaron Jones, because he leads the league for non-quarterbacks in touchdowns, and Aaron Rodgers is saying that this is somebody that needs to get MVP conversation. Aaron Nagler of CHTV said that he's somebody that needs to be in the All-Pro conversation. TJ Lang tweeted earlier that he has a different skill set from Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook, but can have the same sort of impact while sharing the backfield with somebody that we'll talk about here a little bit later. A little appreciation here for Aaron Jones. Let's start there. How fortunate have the Packers been to watch this kid just rise into the star?
Yeah, I mean, I know that the running joke on Twitter last year was kind of like free Aaron Jones, but that's really what's happened this season. And I think that Matt LaFleur is one of the perfect coaching, or was one of the perfect coaching options, now is one of the perfect head coaches to be able to utilize him effectively in the type of offense that Matt LaFleur likes to run. So I think a lot of people kind of expected Aaron Jones to have maybe quote unquote a breakout year in Green Bay, but I'm not sure anyone necessarily expected him to have 14 touchdowns through 10 games with a 4 touchdown performance in Dallas and then a 3 touchdown performance yesterday, or however many days ago it was now, it was so long, in Carolina. So just kind of the emergence of Aaron Jones in Green Bay has been really what this offense has been missing, is that utilization of the backs and kind of removing some of that load from Aaron Rodgers, saying that he doesn't need to do it all with his arm because, believe it or not, this is one of the most, if not the most, I would argue it probably is the most talented backfield that Aaron Rodgers has had in his tenure in Green Bay. And how can you not like that? How can you not be excited about that as a Packer fan?
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, was whether or not Jones and Jamal Williams surpassed that of probably Eddie Lacy and James Starks. That group was pretty talented, but the longevity certainly wasn't there in terms of Eddie and James. Starks was towards the end of his tenure by the time him and Lacy sunk up there. One more thing on Aaron Jones that I want to talk about is his improvement in the passing game, because one thing, and I don't think it was real valid. It wasn't a reason to essentially nail him to the bench. But there was some validity to the concerns of Jones in the passing game. He left a little bit, not a ton. It wasn't like he was a horrible pass blocker, but he did leave a little to be desired as a blocker, especially in comparison to Jamal Williams, who we'll also get to. But he also you could see him at times fighting himself in the passing game to catch the ball. And that's reared its head a couple times this season. But ultimately, I really think something that's been the most impressive for Jones is his improvement as a pass receiver. If you look at the game against Dallas, the game against Kansas City, he was phenomenal in both of those games. And he's had some opportunities. There was a play Sunday, I think it was Dusty Evely, pointed out that Rodgers he threw a fly route to Devontae Adams, and had he hit a crosser to Aaron Jones, Jones might have scored himself on that play as well. So tell me a little bit, I mean, just how impressive is it that Jones has found his way to improve in the passing game? Because that's been a big deal. You mentioned that earlier of getting running backs involved. You can't do that if they can't catch the ball. And Jones has been a much better player in that regard this season.
Yeah, definitely as his utilization in the passing game as a receiver. But I also think that we have to give him a lot of credit for what he's done in pass protection.
100%.
I mean, he's shown up on a couple highlight reels already for some of the blocks he's made. And that was, kind of his knock his first couple seasons, and why Jamal Williams was in on so many obviously passing downs was because Jamal Williams had the reputation of being a better blocker of the two. But Aaron Jones really now at this point is getting his foot in the dirt. He's getting off his blocks, whether it's, in the screen game or on some of those quick passing plays. But when he does have to stay home and actually block, he's been pretty successful. Even if he just can get like a little chip on a rusher, he's doing enough that Aaron Rodgers can either scramble or throw the ball away, which is really all you could ask of Jones. I mean, I think in the offseason he cut, was it gummy bears that was his favorite candy? Yes. And he added a little bit of muscle. So really anything that this team has asked him to do, he's stepped up and done. And I do agree with you that it seems like there are times where he's maybe in his head a little too much in the passing game. But as he kind of develops more into a pass catching back, I think that just adds an entirely new layer to what Aaron Jones can do for this offense, which is really exciting if you think about the fact that he's got 14 touchdowns again in only 10 games. Kind of where his numbers finish at the end of the season will be really fun. And whether there's more receiving touchdowns added to that, or if he gets it done in the ground game, either way, he's completely explosive and completely dynamic, and something that everyone has been waiting for, because, this is something that we thought was possible. And now with Matt LaFleur coming in, it's something that's been unleashed, I guess, in the Green Bay backfield.
Yeah, it has. And I think, you mentioned his pass blocking. He's done a much better job getting his anchor beneath him. I think something that he did struggle with was kind of lunging in pass pro. He's done a much better job of basically keeping his butt underneath him, for lack of better phrasing. But it's been a positive thing. The passing game stuff has been phenomenal. It's given Green Bay another dynamic. I mean, nobody's going to confuse the Packers receivers other than Devontae Adams with the perfect pack from 2011, for example. There's some to be desired there, but they've played well. I don't want to knock on those guys, but what Jones has done is given them another dynamic option on the ground and through the air. It's been a positive thing. The other thing that I think is really positive about Jones, knock on wood, through 10 games, he's been healthy. And that's something that wasn't the case his first two seasons. Had some bad injury luck, a couple small leg injuries, and he hasn't had those to date this year. So, I mean, the best ability is availability, and Jones has been available for the entire year, and that's contributed to a lot of his success as well. As much as I love Aaron Jones, Sunday at the game, my brother sent me a text and said, did you buy that Aaron Jones jersey yet? Because really, of the Packers stars, he's really the only one whose jersey I don't have at this point. I have a problem and an addiction that needs to be fed, apparently, or at least I need to seek treatment, I think. But I told him it's funny because I think I'm actually more likely to buy a Jamal Williams jersey than I am a Aaron Jones jersey. And that's not because I think Williams is a better player than Jones, but I love him. He's hilarious. Yeah. He's a lot of fun on the field. He runs angry, and there's something about that. Like when Eddie Lacy got rolling and you saw him just carrying 3, 4, 5 defenders down to the goal line. Jamal Williams has had a couple plays like that this year. Matt LaFleur said once during a game, all gas, no break. I think Jamal Williams embodies that. You're never going to tell him that a game doesn't matter. You're never going to tell him that a play doesn't matter. The Packers are losing 26-3 against the Chargers. He catches a pass. He breaks 2 tackles and gets in the end zone. I mean, he's all gas, no break. I mean, he's a lot of fun. We'll get to some of his off-field stuff because obviously he's hilarious and you can't tell that story without it. But he's one of those guys that he kind of came under fire, myself included. I'll eat some crow. I was looking forward to Green Bay potentially finding somebody a little more explosive than he is. I was thinking maybe he could get displaced by Dexter Williams, who we will talk about later in this show as well. but he hasn't. And I'm actually thankful for that because I was wrong. Williams definitely adds, he's almost like the perfect change of pace back. Mark Eckel of Packer Report pointed out, that this is kind of similar, not quite the same, but similar to Dorsey Levens and Edgar Bennett. On the field, Jamal Williams has made the improvements. Maybe not as dramatic. He doesn't lead the league in touchdowns. The box scores aren't going to look sexy. But what have you seen from Williams during this season that you think can say, yes, he's gotten better in those spots and he really helps this Packers team there?
Jamal Williams is someone that I have loved watching from the very beginning, even when he was drafted with, Aaron Jones and then Devontae Mays. Jamal Williams was kind of my guy from the beginning from that trio. And when he was initially starting over Aaron Jones, I was really excited for him. He was someone that he was my favorite pick of the draft class. I didn't necessarily think that he would have the type of production that Aaron Jones was pegged to have or is having right now. But like you said, it's just, he's really a selfless player. And I tweeted a couple weeks ago, I think it was during the Chargers game. He is someone that I would want in my locker room every single day of the week. And it's not just because he's fun loving and energetic, but he will give it 110%, whether you're down by 40 or if he has to come in and make a block to send you to the Super Bowl, circa, John Kuhn. Not that block sent them to the Super Bowl, but you know what I'm saying? He's willing to put himself on the line for his team at all times. And what more could you ask from a guy like that? And I think, honestly, he's playing a utility role, knowing that he's not the star of the show. So for him to come in and be as successful as he is, while also saying that he supports Aaron Jones for MVP of the league, that's, a close-knit group. That's someone you want as a teammate. But to answer your original question, going into this 2019 season, I really was advocating for Jamal Williams to be used more in the passing game. I think he is kind of a bigger bodied, bruising running back. So you can't look away from what he can do as a runner, but where I really wanted to see him get more opportunities was as a receiver. And probably the most interesting statistic or fact, I guess, so far through 10 games of the season is just that last in 2018, Jamal Williams had, I think he actually didn't have any receiving touchdowns. He had 3 rushing touchdowns and that was it. So to now be in 2019, he only has 1 rushing touchdown and he has 5 receiving touchdowns. So it just kind of, shows how the Packers are utilizing their 2 different backs and the skills that they value in those 2 backs. And the role that Jamal Williams is in right now, I think is perfect for him. And I think that this offense works better when Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams are both getting, maybe 20 touches for Jones and at least 10 touches for Williams to kind of balance out that backfield.
Yeah, 60-40, 65-35 kind of split. I think that's about the sweet spot for where those guys are at. Williams is a lot of fun. I agree with you. I think he's had some opportunities. You've seen him in the passing game. I think back to he had a screen pass against the Steelers in his rookie season. He caught a pass from Brett Hundley and ran 50-plus yards for a touchdown. The problem with these guys in the passing game was really Mike McCarthy's offense didn't ask the running backs to do a whole hell of a lot in the passing game. They were really 6th offensive tackles. So with that in mind, it was tough to – and, it really is. The most efficient matchup for an offense is the running back against the opposing team's linebacker, safety, whatever it is. When Packers fans, moan and groan that Christian McCaffrey gets matched up with a linebacker, although that didn't really happen on Sunday. But if he gets matched up with a linebacker in the passing game and they're like, oh, man, we can't cover the running backs. Well, nobody really can. The Saints offense almost runs through throwing the ball to those running backs. Same goes for New England for the most part as well. Slot receivers and running backs. It's an efficient model. I'm just happy to see that the Packers have finally started to use that. Jamal Williams has been a big reason for that success. Something else, and again, I don't think we can talk about Williams without this, but he has a couple particular quotes this season, and there are 3 of them in particular, and I want you to pick your favorite one. So after the Broncos game, he said that he felt like a mermaid in the elements. It slows everybody down, and then he mentioned that he also kind of felt like SpongeBob. So I'm going to combine those. Sunday after the game, he mentioned that he thought he was in Frozen 2, and then he said, has Frozen 2 come out yet? I haven't seen it. He had no idea that Frozen 2 hadn't come out yet, which I thought was pretty funny. And then Monday, as the team is meeting reporters before they go on their bye week, he tried to play off a question and then basically said, I got to be honest with you, I stopped listening to your question about halfway through of it. So, of those three things, which one of them got you to laugh the hardest?
I think probably the first one, with him saying that he felt like a mermaid, because, he's always given those kind of quirky, fun interviews, and that's just like peak Jamal Williams. That's just who he is. He's the guy that dances on the sidelines, dances before games, dances before kickoffs when maybe you're like, hey, Jamal, they're about to kick the ball.
Pay attention, man.
He's just like out there wiggling. But yeah, I think just he felt like a mermaid. It caught me so off guard, but it was so perfect for who he is as a person that was my favorite so far. But again, can't really go wrong. They're all great.
Yeah, I think I laughed the hardest at that. I'm not going to lie to you. I stopped listening because he totally tried to play it off and give some generic answer, and it didn't work. And the team's going on the bye week, so it wasn't disrespectful or anything. His mind was elsewhere. But yeah, like you said, his personality is great. Before the games, if those of you that go to the games and watch warm-ups, I love watching Jamal Williams play catch with fans in the stands. I think that's really cool. He really is. He's just an easy guy to root for. And I'm happy to see him having success in this offense. And I really think he's somebody that if the Packers get to where they want to go, he could play. He's not going to play a huge role. He's not going to run for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns in a playoff game, but he can do some things to help a team win. And I think he's somebody that he's like, if this was a basketball team, Jamal Williams is kind of like the glue guy, 3-and-D or something like that. That's what he does. That's what he brings to this team. And there's some intangible effect to that I think has been positive. That's really been it in terms of the backfield production. They had a little bit of Trey Carson when Jamal Williams was hurt with a concussion against Dallas. But other than that, Dexter Williams has like 3 carries on the season. He's been a healthy scratch more often than not. Any disappointment level there at all, considering he was a 6th-round pick? And, I mean, you really kind of did see it in the preseason. His first game against the Texans got everybody talking about that one cut that he has. But, I mean, then you kind of heard some of the negative stuff. The first player that Matt LaFleur kicked out of a drill was Dexter Williams, kind of MF'd him out of the drill, basically, because Williams was struggling with some of the small stuff. And it looks like that's something that's going to continue. But do you have any thought that maybe he's somebody that can contribute to this team down the stretch of the season?
I think it says a lot, or it said a lot at the time, that the Packers were more willing to go with Trey Carson and elevate him from the practice squad than they were to give Dexter Williams some game reps when Jamal Williams was out. I think that kind of told us what we maybe needed to hear about him and how he's progressing so far this season. In training camp, I did like him a lot. I was, I think, leaning towards Trey Carson just because of his experience and the fact that he's been there before. I understood the reasoning behind Williams. I think I predicted them to keep Williams given that he was a draft pick and he has a higher upside. You can't really argue the talent there, that his upside was bigger, but the fact that he's been a healthy scratch for so many games is kind of a concern. But to me, what's really going to be interesting is when Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams are both up for contract extensions. You know that Aaron Jones is going to make his money and he's not leaving Green Bay. You'd like to think that Jamal Williams does get a team-friendly deal to stay in the backfield as a 1-2 punch. Obviously, he's not going to make Aaron Jones money. I don't think he would have a problem with that. I think he is a team-first player in every aspect of the fact that he would like to stick around, especially if the team is remaining successful. I think you'd want to be there. So maybe that is kind of where I see Dexter Williams as potential insurance if they have to let Jamal walk in a couple of years. But by that time, the Packers could be looking for a running back in like the 3rd round, or I don't think that draft status means necessarily as much as it did to, or does to Gutekunst as it did to Ted Thompson. So I guess I don't really know how to answer that other than I do think it's a concern that he hasn't seen the field already through 10 games.
Yeah, I think that if you got an honest moment, if you injected Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst with truth serum at the end of training camp, I think LaFleur would have admitted he wanted Trey Carson to stay on the roster.
Yeah.
And Gutekunst said, I drafted this guy. He's more talented. We're going to play the long game and go with that. So I think it's a concern, not a huge one. Obviously, if one of the guys gets hurt, then it becomes a concern because Williams has done nothing. He's played a little bit of special teams when he has been active, but like I mentioned, for the most part, he's been a healthy scratch. So I'm curious to see what they do with that down the stretch. If the Packers were to clinch their division and their playoff seeding early, I wonder if that would be a time to kind of get him in the mix. But I mean, that's a good problem to have if that's the case.
Right.
But we'll see what they do in that regard. The other bit is the muscle man, Danny Vitale, the make fullbacks great again guy, and I don't know if he's quite lived up to the billing. There are some moments where I think you've seen his ability to be a weapon in the offense. There was a play against the Raiders. They kind of threw a quick out to him, and he was athletic enough to outrun a linebacker and make a nice gain out of that. He had a wheel route against the Bengals, or excuse me, not the Bengals, the Broncos. Bad teams, AFC, it's all the same. He's had that. As a blocker, I think he leaves a little bit to be desired, but are we ever going to get a fullback touchdown this season? I feel like we were promised one.
I want to say yes, we'll get at least one. And I think that's what's so interesting about Vitale is just that he is more of a dynamic threat, I guess, in the passing game. And like you said, he's had some really nice looking wheel routes. He's made a couple nice blocks for Aaron Jones. But he seems like he gets open. And I don't remember which game it was. It might have been against the Raiders, but he was like open in the middle of the field and Rodgers just missed him on his reads because I don't think maybe they weren't on the same page. Maybe he didn't expect him to be there. But it seems like Vitale is just consistently available, I guess, in the passing game if Aaron Rodgers wanted to look for him there. But the idea of handing the ball to him in a goal-to-go situation is like, wait, what? It's right. So interesting. And if you look at John Kuhn, it was always the fullback sneak, I guess it's not a sneak, a fullback draw in like those kind of really close goal line situations. And that's kind of the reputation that Green Bay had with their fullback. So to see Danny Vitale come in a traditional fullback role in a position that is so loved and so appreciated in Green Bay, and then to see him as like a third pass catching back and not even get any touches on the ground has been, to me, one of the most confusing but also fascinating parts of this backfield.
Yeah, well, if nothing else, his mustache is incredible. So we have that going for him. I'll be interested to see if they can hit a play to him. I think there's a time where they're going to sneak him out to the other side on a play action pass. I call it the Kyle Juszczyk play that Kyle Shanahan uses. Maybe they use it against San Francisco here in a couple of weeks as an ode to Kyle Shanahan. But Maggie, thank you for joining me on this version to talk some running backs here over the bye week. If people want to find your work, where can we find you? What do you do? Everything of that sort.
I am on Twitter at Maggie J. Loney, Loney. And I also do some writing. Like Jacob says, I write a piece called That's What Cheese Said. And I write another random article a couple times a week for Cheesehead TV.
And we synced up pretty good there on the getting healthy before the bye.
Yep.
I made a reference to No Strings Attached shortly after that. So I'm married to a diehard NSYNC fan, so I understand all of those references as well. So I appreciated it. So thank you for that. I am the host of this show. I am Jacob Westendorf. You can follow me at Jacob Westendorf. I will have more content coming for you guys through this bye week. Thank you to Maggie. Thank you guys for watching. And, of course, as always, go Pack, go.